suddenly erupted inside of you. This apparently essential piece of you that was just dormant until you were 23, 24.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, because of some crazy guy that after that you never met again, with some crazy parties, it opened up something in you. And it's exactly at the moment of this progress full moon. Welcome to Astrology Insights. This is the second part of our series on the progressed lunation cycle with my guest Sander. If you haven't seen the first part, I recommend you should, because otherwise it will be hard to understand what we're talking about in this part. At the end of the first part, I was mentioning some of the aspects, so that's the angles planets are making towards the progressed full moon in this chart in 2009, 2010, when he was about 23 or 24 years old. I finished then with a conjunction of Priapus, of the progressed full moon with Priapus and Saturn, symbolizing hard work, that somehow it will all would be flashing out into a hard and responsible worker. Another thing that I saw was a conjunction with the midpoint between Neptune and Pluto. It was not an exact conjunction, so it would flash out only in 2011. Maybe that means something to you. Sometimes I don't. But it means that that in many charts that I've seen, because I don't know many astrologers working with this, but in many charts that I've seen, an important decision in the field of love, and also in the field of sacrifice, self-sacrifice, either for a relationship or for work. And it's an important decision for a long period of time, often like 25 or 30 years lying ahead. So that was being touched as well. There was a trine towards what's called Pars Fortuna, the lucky point in the chart. A trine means a fast and easy development. The lucky point is where a person finds luck, where your energies flow the easiest, where you can be yourself. And it's also what's easy for you to give. In your case, it's in Leo in the 8th house. Leo is self-confidence, being the leader, the natural leader, not the boss, the leader, the true leader. And the 8th house has a Scorpio energy, which is risky, feeling very comfortable with risks, with intensity, with dependency, with uncertain outcomes, and also, as I illustrated, as I mentioned in a video on Scorpio, working with the money of others. So that was touched as well. I'll leave it to that. There are some other aspects to mention also concerning the first quarter of the progress moon, but I think that's too many astrological symbols. So if you like, you can tell us first something about yourself.
Okay.
Just your name and how old you are and so on. And then later on, maybe you can tell us something about the spirit in your life.
Okay, I will. So my name is Sander. I'm 37. I have my own architecture company. And we specialize in high-end residential design, mostly here in the Netherlands. And it's very interesting because when we did the reading, I think about 8 months ago, it was very spot on for me. So to tell my story a bit, in 2009, already quite a while ago for me, I graduated from my bachelor's in architecture, so in building and construction design. And my parents, as a present, gave me the possibility for a trip. And up to that point, I never took a trip by myself. I was always with my parents or with perhaps an ex-girlfriend for a couple of days, but nothing, far and abroad. And I decided to go to Hong Kong. I don't know why. It's just the epiphany of the moment. Could have been Japan as well for a love of Asian stuff, but went to Hong Kong. Flew there, first time ever alone. Ended up at a hostel, completely not me.
You were back then 23
I
years
was
old.
23, yeah.
Just for context, yeah.
I was 23, and we're in December, end of December, so close to Christmas and New Year's. And so I'm in between finishing my bachelor's. So I finished my bachelor's and waiting for the master program that would then start in February. So I had a couple of months to bridge. I'm in Hong Kong for 2 weeks. And after 2 days of taking the subway, walking around, I was like, seen it, done that, get me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore, whatever. But of course, I couldn't go back. This is all pre-social media, pre-smartphones. I just had like some kind of cheap, Sony Ericsson Walkman phone. So, I mean, the old days. And while there, it was a hostel, very international, people from all over the planet. And I don't know, third, fourth day in, there happens to be a guy, another Dutch guy, and which is a royal, what is it called, a military police officer.
Yeah, Royal Military Police.
Royal Military
of the Netherlands, yeah.
Yeah, that was staying there for a couple of days. And he says, you're Dutch, I'm Dutch, come with me, we're going to party. And I was very like, why do we have to? I don't want to. Leave me alone. I'm happy with my hotel room. I was perfectly fine just staying in my hotel room, going down for dinner and coming back. But I mean, I was
also
like,
being very bored.
Very bored at the same time, but it was very safe.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls me along. He says, okay, why not? And just live a little. I was like, okay, if you tell me. So we go along. I think we have dinner somewhere, nothing special. And then he says, okay, let's start bar hopping. So we go from bar to bar, drink a bit. And I think we reached the first or second bar. And the first thing, of course, being me, I say, okay, where can I hang my jacket? Is there a locker? I have keys. I have my hotel card. I shouldn't lose my hotel card. What's the address again of the hotel? I should remember it in case there is something. And he's like, you know what? Chill, and who cares? Just put your jacket over the first chair and nobody's going to steal it. I'm like, really? Okay. So I put my jacket on the first seat. He puts it on the second seat. Night continues. We have a few drinks. He dances, I do something that maybe resembles some kind of human movement. End of the night, it's done. We go to another bar, and of course, you can guess, his jacket was still there and mine was gone. So, classic. But it was a lot of fun. I was like, this guy is so cool. How come this guy is so cool and I'm so boring? But at the same time, I was also happy being a bit boring. It was safe. So we go to another bar, and at the time, I'm like, what? I don't know what time it is. Late at night, maybe 2, 3 in the morning. I said, let's go home. Let's go back to the hostel. Tomorrow, new day. Okay. So we go back. Not much happens. Next day, he says, okay, Sander, it's my last day here. I'm about to leave. There's one big party, which was like some kind of Christmas party, BBC radio, something big. I never heard of it, of course. So he says he has tickets. I don't know how he got them. He just has tickets. He says, okay, you and I, we're going tonight. Okay. So I spent the day doing a bit of nothing, just walking up and down the street, passing time. I don't know what he's probably doing, something very cool. And night comes. He says, okay, let's go for dinner. Okay. So we go for dinner. We go to a small restaurant close by. And there's this long line, 10, 12 couples waiting there. And he just skips the entire line, walks in, ignores everyone that's standing on the line, ignores the waiter that's taking the reservations, and sits down with the prettiest girl of the whole restaurant. I'm like, dude, okay, risky. So I just tag along. Of course, I apologize to everyone in the whole line. I say, sorry. And we go and sit down. And I say in Dutch, do you know her? And he's like, yeah, of course. You don't? I was like, should I? And there's this half conversation with her, and she's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, okay." And my friends are coming. I was like, "Okay." Well, I didn't know there were friends as well. And other girls come and they sit next to us. At that time, I'm very confused. I'm like, "Why am I here? What am I doing here?" And we're like in this restaurant. And for anyone that went to Hong Kong and knows a Chinese restaurant, it's like pure chaos. There's sound, there's noise, you can't hear each other. There's just people walking, food coming by. It's just very chaotic. And at a certain point, this friend asks one of the girls, or let's say the prettiest girls, if she has a bit of drugs. I'm like, okay, this took a turn quite fast, but everything seemed very mellow. And he said, it's just a downer. No worries. It's okay, and it's nothing special, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. Okay, so I ignore it. He gives it to me at the time, and we take the subway. And by mistake, we take the wrong subway. We end up somewhere completely different. Have to change lines a couple of times. And by the time when we reach the spot, we both don't remember how we got there. And of course, if it would be in Europe, you can, let's say, remember the name. But since I don't read any Cantonese, you know, it says something something. So we were somewhere. I at least knew we were in Hong Kong, but that's about it. So we're standing in line, waiting for this big BBC evening party. Starts being quite late, I don't know, 11, 12, at least for me, late. Probably for normal people, the party starts at 1 or 2, but okay. So we're standing in line, and suddenly this police officer with this dog shows up. So, which of course meant trouble. He just walks past and says, "Hey, I'll see you soon." And it just continues walking and leaves me behind. I'm like, okay, ready for jail. And the police ask if I have anything. Of course, I say no. Of course, the dog says bullshit. So, of course, I get my wallet out because I put it in my wallet. And I happen to put it together with some aspirin, some general aspirin, because, of course, I'm prepared. So the guy asked, what is this? I say, it's aspirin. It says on the back of it, it says aspirin. And he says, okay, you know what? Continue, enjoy. Completely drenched in sweat. Enter the party, find him somewhere at random. This party starts. I mean, it's music, okay? It was fun. And he starts getting drinks. And at the time, you have all these kind of combination drinks. And one of the drinks is Red Bull with some kind of whiskey. And I knew some alcohol was inside, but he didn't really tell me what was inside. And I knew it was Red Bull, but I wasn't much of a Red Bull drinker. I had enough energy of myself, so I never had to use coffee or Red Bull. So I was already quite hyped. And the night continues, and number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and around number 5, 6. I mean, my heart is like racing like crazy. I just remember we're still in Hong Kong, in the middle of nowhere. I don't have any stuff, no passport on me, nothing, just a hotel card and my wallet. And we decide to take this downer. And of course, after that much Red Bull, you can take anything in the world. You would just go faster than Usain Bolt. So I had this brilliant idea after half an hour of waiting and nothing happening of getting some other drugs, an upper. And he's like, yeah, good idea. So with the zero experience that I have, I go in search of, and of course I end up at the. My logic was probably if you have a tattoo and you look very mean, maybe like in likelihood of chance, like statistically, not being discriminative, but statistically, you could be a person that knows someone. So of course, I ended up at the wrong person, but got directed to the right person. Of course, the standard 14-year-old girl that happens to be the drug mule of the whole eastern part of the planet. And she gives us an upper and says, oh, here's one for free. So we had 3 things. I go back. We decide I take a half, he takes a whole. And of course, time passes, more Red Bull flows. I mean, heart is going, I don't know, 180. And we decide to take the rest. which was a very bad idea. And the next thing I know, I find myself washing my hands in the bathroom with a guy standing next to me and asking me if I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, you've been washing your hands pretty long right now. I'm like, yeah, so? And he's like, did you take something? I said, maybe. And what did you take? So I tried to explain, but even I didn't know what I took. He said, how much you take? I said, one and a half. He says, okay, you're gonna die. And then he walked off. And the next thing I know, I look left again, and there's a cleaning lady cleaning the floors. All the lights are on. I'm like, really, what the hell just happened? So I dry my hands, which were by the time all bloated and soft because I had been washing my hands for I don't know how many hours, and hot water, by the way. Just to so I come out, I grab the door with my sausage fingers, open up the door, and this guy that I met like a day before is sitting there, and he's like, "Ah, you're finally out," and all the lights were on. Everything was clean. The festival was gone. There were no more people. It was just, as if I entered a new world. And I was like, what happened? Why you didn't call me? I said, I tried. So clearly I'd been standing there for a very long time. And I missed the whole party. So we decided, let's head back to the hostel. Red Bull didn't wear off yet, so I was still quite hyped. We got out and we just found ourselves in some kind of shopping mall in Hong Kong. And I must say, to this date, I still don't know where it is. Never find out. So we exit the shopping mall, and the idea is like, how do we get home? We just don't know. And we decide to wing it and just walk a direction in the hope that we would hit water. And my fate was if we would hit water, we would roughly know on the map where we were. You could walk along the shore. Of course, Hong Kong is quite big, but in that moment, we were like, no, we can walk that. So we started walking, and we end up in a small village where they were doing Tai Chi, morning Tai Chi, 5, 6 in the morning. And we decide to join, not at the back, but in the front line, and eventually also teaching the others how to do Tai Chi, which they also participated. Yeah, so we taught them the ways of the West. And after a while, I don't know how long we did actually. We walk off, continue walking. I don't know. We even crossed the highway. I think there was just traffic. We just crossed. It was like, fuck it. I don't know. What's the worst that can happen? So we cross the highway, find a taxi, enter the taxi with no money. Are able to find back to roughly the area where we were staying at. For those that know Hong Kong, and we were staying in the areas of Causeway Bay on Hong Kong Island, and we get dropped off there. And of course, we had no money, so I mean, the idea was the taxi stops and then we run. He had a little bit different understanding of the taxi stops. His interpretation was the taxi is still driving and then he runs, leaves me behind for the taxi to stop and then run. So okay, that happens. Of course, I mean, I was quite athletic, so I had a good sprint. And that ends up that 2 completely crazy days in Hong Kong. And I think it took me at least another full 24 hours before I could sleep. So I think I was awake for a very long time. Had a rest a couple of days, and then he left by the time. I was still a bit flabbergasted about what had happened in those 2 days. And somebody had the brilliant idea, said, hey, Sander, why just don't go to China? You can get a tourist visa, you cross the border, and there's Huaqiangbei, which is an area with a lot of shops, electronic shops. Like they sell cameras, mobile phones, anything digital, anything tech. And I was like, okay, why not? I get a visa, I cross the border, and again, they forgot to tell me which exit, because in China, the subway stations are gigantic. So you have maybe 5, maybe 10 exits, but they can also be 2 kilometers away within the same subway station. You just walk from area to area. And of course, in a chance of 1 out of 10, I took, of course, the wrong one. ended up in the middle of nowhere walking. And while walking, two girls came up to me, and one of them said, "Are you an English teacher?" I was like, "Should I be an English teacher?" And like, "You could be." And I was like, "Do I look like one?" And said, "Maybe."
And you hardly spoke English
And I
back then.
spoke English. My English was okay. I could manage. And definitely not an English teacher. I would say I don't know how an English teacher looks like. I was just a foreigner, let's say. So, and I exchanged my email address with one of the two ladies that were there. We said goodbye, and I walked around. And that's about it for the tiny China experience. New Year's came. I saw the let's say the New Year's Eve, but I had seen enough. I was interested still in Hong Kong, but I had seen enough. I was ready to come back to the Netherlands. So I returned back to the Netherlands, and like I said, there was this bridge period. We're talking about first week of January, that my school would start, or university would start in February. So I still had a little bit of time. So I spent my days like any other young person, doing absolutely nothing, going to the gym and watching movies till far too late at night. So around 3 or 4 in the morning, I would finish my second movie or third movie of the night. And at the time, you still had MSN. So I would jump on MSN. It would still be on all evening. And this girl that I met that asked me if I was a teacher, the colleague, Lily, came online, and we started chatting together. And it became a recurring thing for those 2 months that every time I would go to sleep, she would be online, and we would speak for another hour, and we would just speak about life. I mean, our lives were so completely different, but at least I had a small glimpse of where she lived. I knew a little bit, but I find it very interesting. I was very pulled towards being with her, but being also in a new place, or at least also not being in the Netherlands, where I felt my life was just so boring, always repeating itself. So I had this marvelous idea: how about I apply for a job, because we didn't have money, and if I have a job, maybe I could
A job in China.
a job in Asia, in China.
Yeah.
I could live there, and let's see what happens then. So I started applying, but if you remember, I just had a bachelor's. I had 2 or 3 internships experience, but that was it. I mean, I didn't have any experience. At the time, I thought, no problem. But of course, looking back, it's like, who's this kid? It doesn't know anything. So kept applying. And I mean, with applying, I mean, maybe I sent 100 resumes. At a certain point, I didn't care anymore. It was like, Control A, all 20 of them in the same email. I just like, maybe some luck will come. And the last few, I said, okay, I really need to put my heart into it. And then suddenly there was one company in Shenzhen, so just over the border with Hong Kong, that replied, an American company. And Americans are often very polite and very kind in their way of doing, not like the Dutch are always quite straightforward. And they sent me this very kind email saying, thank you for your resume, thank you for your application, really enjoyed it, great work. If you could be here upcoming Monday, and it was a Wednesday, you have the job. But it was, to me, it was like a very polite way of saying, bad luck, next time better.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'll take the bluff. So I had a multiple entry visa, and I still had one entry left. And I think it was 3 entries or something. I had one left.
It was the visa from
for China.
Your previous
from that trip.
crossing the border with China.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I think
because
one
this
or
was
two,
3 months later.
3 months later. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was still
Yeah.
valid for, I don't know, a short while.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if this company gives me the bluff, I'm gonna take the bluff. So the same day, I bought a ticket for, I don't know, prices that nowadays you cannot get it anymore, but at the time, it was relatively good. Packed my bags. I was like, we're going to China. And I remember that the morning of when I had to leave was, I think, the hardest moment ever, because it was like being torn away from your everything that you're used to, your friends, your parents, everything that is normal to you, even your language. I just said goodbye, and it was extremely difficult. But once I sat in the taxi to go to, I think, the train station and to the airport, then the travel started. So I flew to China, um, ended up at some kind of shady hostel. And then we're talking now, I think it's Friday or Saturday. Monday morning, 8 o'clock, I was there. I was like the first one there. I didn't want to miss it. I just wanted to be the first. And then, of course, the boss arrived, Peter, and he says, who are you? Like, remember the guy that you emailed? He's like, yeah. Is that you? I said, yeah. And he was like, wow, crazy. He said, you're crazy. I said, how about you give me a job now? Because I don't have money to fly back. So at least give me something. So he said, okay, come in, come in. And actually, that's where the whole adventure of China really started. I started working there. I started working exactly the same like the Chinese, doing 70, 80 hours, or for those who know, the 996, crazy amount of hours. Um, at an architecture company while I didn't even have a degree, at a time where the world was in a financial crisis, 2008, it was 2010 by then. I was just turned 24, just by a few days. Actually, I was 23. I was about to turn 24. And in China, anything was possible at the time. You could design something, and 6 months later, the skyscraper was built. So completely mental. And the girl that I met, we kept in contact. And about 1 or 2 weeks after I landed and stayed at the hostel suddenly said, okay, you cannot book extra days because holidays are coming up, and holidays are reserved for other Chinese people or other foreigners that pay more than you. And I was like, okay, I can pay more. And they were like, we don't accept it. And I was like, so what now? And they said, that's up to you. I'm like, what do you mean? And they just very kindly ushered me out. And I was like, okay, now I got a problem. Now in the middle of nowhere, in the country, I just stayed, I don't know, 2 weeks. I know one girl, I know one American guy, and that's it. With no money, I was like, I'm living the full experience. And that's when I directly moved in together with Lily. And Lily was living in the outskirts of Shenzhen in Bao'an. And it was a 45 to an hour subway ride in a completely crowded subway every morning to work. But I really enjoyed the hardship of doing it, but also the full immersive experience of, of being there. That's how it the start.
Wow, that's spectacular.
Yeah, it's crazy,
Well,
right?
thank you very much for sharing. I can also remember from what you told me back then, 8 months ago, that that also started off a period of about 5 or 6 years in China. You stayed
Yeah.
there, and eventually you sort of became famous among your colleagues for being more Chinese than the Chinese in
Yeah.
your work ethics.
Yeah. Yeah. I became so used to working those hours and being always with my Chinese colleagues that the other foreigners were not used to working those hours or always having dinner at the company, breakfast at the company, lunch at the company, always being at the company and doing everything for the company.
Mhm.
And after 5 to 6 years, it was a bit of a turning point where our feeling together with Lily was, okay, if we stay here, we're going to stay here forever. We're going to do the long haul, or we have one more shot and we transition to Europe and see whatever happens in Europe.
Mhm.
And we returned to the Netherlands, and it was a gigantic culture shock. I mean, in 6 years, a lot happened here in the Netherlands. China developed, of course. China, the economy went different. Here was again starting to be much better. And I returned thinking I had this giant pool of knowledge and experience and travel, and that other companies would be interested. And it turned out nobody cared. Like, they were like, do you know local regulations? I was like, no, but I know how to design a skyscraper. And they were like, yeah, we don't care. So it was this double culture shock. Like everything that I did, I had to start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a company in Amsterdam, a large architecture company, where they also had the same kind of craziness as I have, the same kind of energy, and in relatively short amount of time, I was able to catch up. And within a year, I became team leader, even though I didn't have the official degrees. And after becoming team leader, I also directly got thrown a large client, which was back then Facebook. So I did the office of Facebook in Brussels, which was, I really enjoyed this very complex, where there's complex projects because dynamics, but also because of design, architecture, it's guidelines, a lot of stakeholders. And often the more complex it is, the more I enjoy it, because the more it is that you can show that you have the knowledge. And as a kid, I did a lot of sports, and whenever I won, I was always very sad, because it just meant that the other one was not good enough. There was not enough competition. So I really enjoy when things are extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. So I started working the crazy hours here in the Netherlands, which of course, people here are not that used to it.
Not at all. The Dutch are not used to
exactly
to working those long hours.
And it took a while to become normal again. But it was very beneficial for me in my career to directly get that head start and put myself to the forefront of the company. And at the same time, it also put me in a position where I was able to talk to the clientele that we're busy with right now. So now I have my own architecture company, I should say officially design company, for the past 2.5 years. And we specialize in high-end residential projects. So we do all the houses for let's say the rich and famous, the quote 500, often projects with very tight deadlines, very large budgets, but with a lot of pressure, a lot of stakeholders, often in the urban environment like Amsterdam or Rotterdam. And then to give an idea, you should think of multiple layer basements, swimming pools, extremely large wine cellars, home cinemas, gyms, etc., etc., etc. Everybody, what everybody dreams of, that those kind of projects we do for other people. Mm-hmm. And that experience with all the complexities is exactly where I found myself a bit in that niche.
Yeah.
The niche of the niche.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only say again, it's totally amazing, your story. And well, we are here for astrology video,
exactly.
But, I mean, it could be a video about many subjects. From an astrological point of view, it's also fascinating to see how things work out. Because as an astrologer, you just see the symbols, just see the outlines, but you don't see how it really fleshes out in detail. I won't repeat all the aspects that I mentioned, but for myself, I see clearly that you, as a way of speaking, you filled in all those schematic descriptions of the progressed new moon and full moon. I should also mention, in case it's not fully clear, you found your way of working in China.
Yeah.
But also your wife, because you're still together.
Yeah. We have a son.
You have a son. Yeah. You even told me that since that day you moved in with her because this hostel threw you out.
Exactly. I moved in, and actually since then, except a couple of times that I came back to see my parents, we've always been together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that it was, so we got married in 2016. We were 16 years together. Now we're, 6 years together. Now we're 13 years together, almost 14. And after about a year, I knew I wanted to marry her because I was doing extremely long hours till maybe 1 or 2 at night, almost every day. And it was one day that Lily showed up I think 11 or 12. I was the last one in the office in her pajamas. Shenzhen is very warm, so people in China, certain areas, they will walk around at night because it's so warm.
Yeah.
They walk around in their pajama to ventilate. And she came to the office to sleep on the sofa next to me while I was working. I was like, okay, somebody has that much kindness. And that's the moment I knew,
Yeah.
okay, I want to marry this person. Took many more years before we actually got married, but
Yeah.
we always stayed together. And actually, since then, even though we're from two completely different cultures and two different individuals, there's this. I don't know, we're just always together. It's just it's this bond.
Yeah. It's beautiful and it's very special also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember mentioning also something about a woman meeting
Yeah.
a woman. And also, I told you about this conjunction of the progress full moon with this midpoint, very technical, of Neptune and Pluto,
Yeah.
meaning a decision, a long-term decision involving self-sacrifice, love, and so on, that would flesh out completely in 2011. That seems, because you told me a year later you
This is
finally
2011.
yeah, you had this experience where she came in her
Yeah.
pajamas and stayed on the sofa of the office.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something I could never imagine.
Yeah.
I just know this very abstract
Just a
description.
date. Yeah.
Like, okay, around this time in his life, I've seen that for other people as well.
Yeah.
Something happens that makes you decide something for a long time in your life. So thank you very much for sharing all this.
Thank you for having me.
Before we wrap up, I also wanted to indicate something, that this whole episode, this wild parties with this Dutch guy, this royal military police guy, that was so cool, also sounded to me like a sort of an initiation. And it's like he acted as a kind of a midwife, pulling out some character traits in your character that seem to be hidden until then, because you preferred a safer life.
Yeah.
But then he got them out, and everything that happened afterwards, even the way you work now and the people you work with, they seem to reflect back those parties.
Yeah.
Without the drugs and without all the craziness, but it's still this going all the way, this taking risks, taking crazy decisions. The whole decision process seems like crazy, at least in ordinary, safe terms.
It is.
Yeah, but
to add to that, we have become, let's say, famous between brackets, that we would come into a project often when it's difficult, and to just completely turn it up 180 degrees, like with no care for anything, just, okay, how about we do this? And often then when doing that movement, it all falls into place and then becomes much easier.
Yes, it's fascinating just in itself, as a way of doing things, being able to do things, but also in this context that it suddenly erupted inside of you, this apparently essential piece of you that was just dormant until you were 23, 24.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, because of some crazy guy that after that you never met again, with some crazy parties, it opened up something in you. And it's exactly at the moment of this progress full moon. It's fascinating. So thank you very much for sharing all those beautiful details about your life and all these adventures.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching.